HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents Psychologically Sound, The Mind of Donald J. Trump by Sheldon Roth, M.D. Read by John Mclain. Introduction. Psychologically Sound draws on my 5 decades of psychiatric and academic experience to demonstrate the soundness and humanness of President Donald J. Trump's mind through a long life richly overflowing with people, events, and challenges. Creating a holistic view that avoids a misleading focus on Trump as businessman, celebrity, or politician frees us to see Trump as a complete person whose life fits together, reflects a sound mind, and is recognizably human. Yet Psychologically Sound does not shy away from the unbearable. Trump is depicted in active mental struggle as opposed to mindless repetition, as human as anyone, and yet mysteriously so different from the rest of us, one person leading 330 million people. Understanding how President Trump is more like the rest of us than otherwise increases our capacity to bear the mysterious, and maybe also each other. In pursuit of grasping lifelong holistic themes, and unique to Psychologically Sound, is a psychological dream analysis of Trump's musings on his favorite film, Citizen Kane. This dream analysis, Citizen Trump, reaches into Trump's early family life, his businesses, and his 2 failed marriages, as well as his long relationship with Melania Trump. Among many reader surprises will be the discovery of how Trump values love and marriage above wealth as a core ingredient in a happy life. After his second divorce and prior to his marriage to Melania, he said, "I feel guiltiest about not having had a successful marriage. My parents were married 63 years. The part of my life I think I'm most disappointed in is that I have not had the great marriage. I come from a home where marriage was incredible." And in reference to Citizen Kane, he noted, "In Kane you learn that wealth is not everything. He had the wealth, but he didn't have the happiness." Citizen Trump establishes the values of love, marriage, and family as bedrock elements of Trump's character. Similarly, the media's neglect of the immense importance of Reverend Norman Vincent Peale on Trump's worldview and speaking style is truly astounding. One needs a whole spiritual picture of Donald Trump to glimpse the ever-present influence of Reverend Peale. Trump awards the title of mentor to only 2 people in his life, his father, Fred C. Trump Sr., and Reverend Peale. Trump states, "Dr. Peale was perhaps the greatest speaker I have ever watched. I would leave that church feeling like I could listen to another 3 sermons." In Dr. Peale's writings, we can hear Trump. For example, Peale says, "Never think of yourself as failing, so always picture success no matter how badly things seem to be going at the moment. Stand up to an obstacle. Just stand up to it, that's all, and don't give way under it, and it will finally break. Something has to break, and it won't be you. It will be the obstacle. Every problem has in it the seeds of its own solution. If you don't have any problems, you don't get any seeds." This last positive Pealeism is woven into Trump's accounts of his successes in real estate. The chaos of real estate that appealed to Trump as one of Peale's problem opportunities and its relevance for the current White House chaos is explored, as well as Trump's ease of fabrication, especially on the campaign trail, which never ends for Trump, as it unlocks his speaking style. Effective rhetoric is effective rhetoric. It will also surprise people that Trump is not only familiar with the Swiss psychiatrist and psychoanalyst Carl G. Jung, but leans on Jung as a guide and clarifier of his own psychology. "Jung keeps my mind open to my unconscious. Jung will fine-tune your intuitions and instincts. You will gain a technique for seeing into, versus reading into, the people around you. Jung will give you insights into yourself and the ways in which you and other people operate. Each of us has a persona. We need it for survival. It's the face we put on for public use. The failure of Trump's first two marriages, as well as the near 22-year relationship with Melania Trump, are explained through Trump's understanding of the tension between one's persona and one's private self. Fiercely independent, yet dependently embedded in his personal social fabric, particularly his family and a few closely held friends, Trump has attempted a balance between a branded persona and a more hidden private self. In part, this conflict has kept his virtues less visible. Uncovering the dichotomy of persona versus private self reveals Trump as distinctly thoughtful and introspective, a capacity rarely depicted, if ever, in the general media. To capture a sense of a person requires appreciation of what that person has experienced in life, what the moment reflects of the past, and even what it hints of the future. So the themes of this book swirl back and forth through threads of Trump's life, present and past, while also gathering up those around him. For example, misogyny. What of misogyny? Long before it was politically correct, culturally chic, or legally and culturally mandated, Trump, with little fanfare, was a champion of women. Especially in business, Trump's open pathway for professional advancement benefited women. Trump's promotion of women, unfettered by cultural convention or macho real estate practices, flies in the face of frequent accusations of rampant misogyny. For example, building Trump Tower, against all advice, including his mentor fathers, Trump hired the first female construction manager in New York real estate history, and to this day, the majority of executive positions in the Trump Organization are held by women, with pay equal to men. How Trump's pro-women attitude has continued and played out in the White House is explored, as well as tracing the fascinating family roots of Trump's openness to women's professional abilities through an analysis of 4 generations of formidable Trump women. These 4 generations reflect a deep psychological orientation for Donald J. Trump, the wall of family. This familial castle is a separate social empire. It supersedes all other social relationships, encompasses loyalty, and interestingly, also leads to one of President Trump's handicaps in the White House. No one reaches the level of trust he has in family. One thread of personality's fabric inevitably joins others, and only then is a person recognizable and appreciated. Psychologically Sound builds a picture of an individual enmeshed in the world, and enmeshed with a consistency of personality, beliefs, and quests, all with a sound mind. Sound, except with one major exception: the period following the demoralizing failure of his marriage to Ivana Trump. I describe this special period of regressive turmoil as also one of diminished business acumen, the time of financial fiascos and gambling casinos, the bankruptcies, and faulty social skills, resulting in the unhappiest and shortest marriage of the 3, Marla Maples. The variations of these 3 marriages reveal the depth and complexity of Trump. These are not simple marital repetitions. They are each revealed as strikingly unique. And although soundness of mind may not be of question in certain of President Trump's actions, their dubious nature or value leaves me with many misgivings about Trump. I invite readers to share my struggles with those misgivings while still maintaining support of our president. As stated earlier, this book does not shy away from the unbearable. I imagine many readers are faced with a similar challenge, and will find it helpful to see that misgivings are realistic, likely quite variable since all politics is local, but do not necessarily eliminate firm support of Trump. Anyone interested in this book has a special question in mind. Is President Trump fit to be president? What is fitness for the presidency? American history has answers, intriguing answers, but all inevitably lead to further questions. I use 2 concepts, comparing transactional and transformational goals of leaders, with special attention to the power of persuasion in relation to achieving those goals. Trump is presented as a transformational leader with a handicapped, excessive reliance on single-handed communication as a primary tool of persuasion. Extremely important in this perspective is a discussion of the riotous circus of pathological psychiatric diagnoses applied to President Trump. These pathological diagnoses are unequivocally refuted. Sadly and painfully, psychiatric science can be abused by partisan politics. With great puzzled pleasure regarding presidential fitness, I share with readers an illuminating page from American history that reveals President Trump's similarities to President James K. Polk, the mendacious, reviled as the worst American president in history in the 19th century, and now included among the greats. History is the ultimate judge. In considering President Trump's life, beyond soundness of mind is awe. I would lack sufficient motivation to write this book without consideration of the concept of awe. Awe connotes a mysterious mixture of comprehension and incomprehension, reverence, respect, wonder, astonishment, and on its edges, fear. From a small band of ex-colonists to a burgeoning power of 330 million people, our psychology seeks a supreme leader. For America, fortunately modulated by the checks and balances crafted by our revolutionary founders, a single person out of a sea of people is entrusted with leadership. The mantle of the presidency, in and of itself, evokes awe. The nature of Trump's sweeping, proposed generational changes, transformational, is essential to this emotional package. Psychologically sound wrestles with nature, nurture, and fate, and they're shaping one person, Donald Trump, of sound mind and recognizably human, to be the vehicle of change for many millions. But we are still left with mystery, and for some of us, that mystery includes awe. Chapter 1: Citizen Trump. Citizen Kane. Cinema offers a rich repository of human life, both real and imagined. Although the theater's blank screen is projected on with an endless kaleidoscope of images, how we see them depends on who we are. We can find others and ourselves in images and stories that capture our imagination. Our favorite films occupy a special place in our minds and hearts. Such films capture enduring values and clues as to how we live or long to live. Orson Welles' 1941 cinematic masterpiece, Citizen Kane, is President Donald J. Trump's favorite film. Citizen Kane was nominated for 9 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. Interestingly enough, Trump's favorite film does wonders to help us understand his own character. The film's tale. Charles Foster Kane, the film's central character, lives through the late 19th century and first half of the 20th century. In childhood, he acquires great wealth through his mother's chance acquisition of a mining fortune. The wealth causes his mother to send him far away into the care of the mine's lawyer for proper education and elite breeding. Kane's mining wealth increases phenomenally, and demonstrating extraordinary business skill, he builds a vast publishing empire. Specializing in yellow journalism, idiosyncratically single-minded and rebellious, Kane makes and creates the news. Headline lies become reality for his readers. Before CNN, Trump learned about fake news from Citizen Kane. Handsome, a spellbinding speaker, eager for power, and a financial tycoon, he enters politics. With eyes on the White House, he is on the verge of a landslide victory as governor of New York when a sex scandal crushes his campaign and destroys his first marriage. Thumbing his nose at society, Kane marries his singer mistress, builds an opera house for her, but fails to make her an opera star. She is a talentless, unmotivated victim of Cain's overblown ambition. Ever imperious, Cain retreats to a vast seaside Hearst-like castle in Florida called Xanadu, named from Samuel Taylor Coleridge's poem Kubla Khan. His opulent fortress is filled with endless European art, statues, and valuable collections. His wife, tortured by Cain's inability to love and feeling like one of his collectibles, ultimately leaves him. Isolated, bitter, surrounded by an army of servants, he dies alone, and on his deathbed utters a last word: Rosebud. The film's narrative is Cain's reconstructed life seen through the eyes of a journalist as he searches for the meaning of Rosebud. While he never does, the cinematic audience is let in on the secret. Journalists and Donald J. Trump. The elusive mystery of Rosebud for the film's journalist, which he felt would explain the essentials of Charles Foster Kane's psychology, is both fascinating and ironic. President Trump's current heated feud with journalists hinges on how blind they are to the facts about him and are purveyors of fake news. But there was a time in New York when Donald Trump thrived on the adoration of journalists. Their enthusiasm for him was described in a New York Times Magazine article as akin to rock star fans. Everyday New Yorkers felt a similar keenness. Walking down the street, people approached Trump and touched him, hoping his good fortune would rub off on them. Geist, 1984. In wooing his second wife, Marla Maples, Trump often sent her glowing press clippings about himself, a rather happy and unique form of journalistic endorsement of one's love life. A.J. Benza is a highly successful male version of the late Hedda Hopper, the queen of newspaper tattlers of the 1940s and 50s. In 2016, Benza shared his journalistic memories of Donald Trump. In the late 80s and 90s, it was impossible not to write about Donald. He was everywhere, and he was doing everything. He was getting divorced from Ivana, marrying Marla, becoming a dad again, fixing up Woolman's Rink, renovating 40 Wall Street or Trump Place. It got to a point, wherever I felt I had to be for the good of the column, I'd run into him. Spy Bar? Check. A quick bite at Bowery Bar? Check. Knicks playoff games? Check. Front row at Victoria's Secret's fashion show? Check. So, I'd write the column, and not including him felt like I wasn't doing my job. For years, Donald was a guy who lived and died in the columns. I once said he doesn't check his pulse in the morning, he checks the papers to see if he's alive. Trump's honesty, yes, I said it, was always refreshing. And a lot of people are seeing that today. He says things many of us feel. Sure, he puts his foot in his mouth sometimes. Friedersdorf, 2016. Judge Jeanine Pirro shared similar observations in her 2018 book, Liars, Leakers, and Liberals. Believe it or not, there was a time when the media adored Donald Trump. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, you could hardly pass a newsstand without seeing Donald's face on the covers of glossy tabloids and 50-cent newspapers. There were stories about him gallivanting around New York and attending charity galas, photographs of him standing in front of new buildings, and long stories about business in which he'd give tips to aspiring entrepreneurs. Whether it was about renovating a dilapidated hotel into a showpiece, erecting soaring towers that drew the envy of his peers, or, mostly out of his own pocket, building a skating rink in Central Park, the media reported positive news about Donald Trump on a very regular basis. Pirro describes Trump's constant use of the telephone. Aside from his friends and business partners, the people who called most often were newspaper and magazine reporters. He always took their calls, too. Reporters couldn't get enough of Donald Trump. He was funny and engaging, and his quotes always sold newspapers, magazines, and ad space on news shows. Even when the press was taking shots at Donald's lavish lifestyle, there was respect for him. Occasionally, the press would even publish the acts of charity that Trump preferred to keep secret. Donald tipped waiters, doormen, workers, and everyone. Notably, during those heady New York years, when Donald J. Trump was a special darling of the daily newspaper gossip columns, he played a cat-and-mouse game with those journalists. He often telephoned gossip columnists in a disguised voice, identifying himself as Donald Trump's non-existent publicist, John Barron. Trump confessed to an obsession with the name Barron, a name he later gave to his youngest son, and John is his own middle name. In these anonymous interchanges, he proffered tidbits of Donald Trump gossip, some true and others a bit stretched. As the source of quasi-fake news, perhaps the proverbial shoe was once on the other foot. President Trump's enmeshed tangle of ambivalent symbiosis with the media goes back a long way. It seems fitting that a frustrated journalist is at the center of Trump's favorite film, and that its central character, Charles Foster Kane, leverages the political power wealth can enable as a newspaper publisher. Imagine the artistic awe Orson Welles might reap contemplating President Donald J. Trump's fascination with Citizen Kane. Welles' cinematic mirror of art held up to nature contained a past, a present, and perhaps a prophecy, with some major differences. Trump analyzes Citizen Kane. In 2002, Errol Morris, a critically acclaimed documentarian, was requested by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the Oscars, to film various celebrities discussing their favorite movie. Donald Trump was one, choosing Citizen Kane, and his remarks are revealing. Canfield, 2016. Since the film is fantasy, despite Kane's similarities to publishing magnate William Randolph Hearst, there was in fact no real Charles Foster Kane. Trump's interest in Citizen Kane, and what he finds most powerful in its impact on him, helps us to understand what is important in life for him. Rosebud. Trump suggests that rosebud is the single most significant word in cinema history and is the key to understanding the meaning of Citizen Kane. Rosebud, attention, spoiler alert, is the trade name on the sled a young Kane is playing with in the Colorado snow when his mother abruptly announces to him that very moment he is going away with the mine's lawyer, Thatcher, a man the boy had never met before. The child is reduced to helpless rage and grief. At the film's conclusion, a cleaning crew is throwing unvalued Xanadu trash into a gigantic burning fireplace. As the camera pans into the eliminating inferno, we see the childhood sled, its time-encrusted veneer melting, revealing the name, Rosebud. Rosebud, says Trump, brings a lonely, sad figure back into his childhood. In a deft manner, Trump tuned into the childhood sadness of the grown-up Kane and knew, intuitively, it was a lifelong sadness. Trump's precise empathy finds the heart of the matter and can only come from a person who knows it firsthand, has thought about it, and has come to grips with it. Rosebud brought Kane back to a period of life that was secure, innocent, happy, and to the best of his knowledge, loving, until he was suddenly cast out. Grief-stricken, he raged against leaving his mother. At age 13, Donald Trump was abruptly shipped off to the New York Military Academy at Croton-on-the-Hudson in Upper New York State. From early elementary school, his father, Fred C. Trump Sr., was troubled with the Queens, New York Q Forest School due to complaints of Donald's rebellious infractions and lack of discipline. But what tipped Fred C. Trump Sr. over was discovering that, over a long period, Donald had been secretly going into Manhattan on Saturdays with his close friend, Peter Brandt. Just over the East River, a short subway ride away, Manhattan was a land of exotic adventure compared to quiet Queens. The two boys roamed the streets, Central Park, and ogled the tawdry mysteries of Times Square. This uncontrolled adventuring in dangerous, tempting Manhattan raised great concern in Fred C. Trump Sr. Sending his son to military school was an attempt to bring greater discipline and safety to his life. Bear in mind that about 12 years later, against his father's urgent business warnings, Donald Trump moved to Manhattan to build a real estate empire. Donald Trump easily empathized with young Kane's emotional pain as he was abruptly torn from the home nest. But, unlike Kane, Trump found ways to integrate family, love, and work. I elaborate on this merger in later chapters. One also must wonder about the age at which Fred C. Trump Sr. sent his son away, 13. Fred C. Trump Sr. was just 5 months shy of his 13th birthday when his German-born father, Friedrich, died in the 1918 pandemic flu. President Trump's oldest sister, retired Judge Mary Ann Trump Barry, has said of their father, "My father's father died when he was a teenager, and Dad went to work to support his mother and 2 siblings as a carpenter and as a builder's mule, hauling carts of lumber to construction sites when it was too icy for the mules to climb the hills." Katz, 2016. Fred's German father, Friedrich, was actually 11 when his father died in 1877, but, similar to Donald, Friedrich was sent away at 14 as an apprentice barber in a distant city. 3 generations of Trump males were challenged to prove themselves in early adolescence. We might speculate that this shared challenge at a developmentally malleable age built into them a conviction that adversity is not only to be expected in life, but it presents an optimal setting for mastery. Donald Trump often expresses this attitude in his view that chaos offers opportunity, or as his mentor, Reverend Norman Vincent Peale, aphorized, "Every problem has in it the seeds of its own solution. If you don't have any problems, you don't get any seeds." Peale, 1952. This proposition will be later elaborated on in a discussion of Reverend Norman Vincent Peale's influence on President Trump. Love and marriage. Hidden within a useful nocturnal dream are a dreamer's central, unresolved, gnawing conflict and a solution. The pathway to understanding is often guided by a powerful dream image. Roth, 1987. Similarly, with psychological intuitiveness, Trump fathoms that the solution to Kane's grief and failed love lies in unlocking the mysteries of Rosebud and its links. Kane's 2 marriages failed, and that is why when Morris asks Trump what advice he would give Kane if he had such an opportunity, Trump unhesitatingly says, "Get yourself a different woman." Trump, like Kane, had 2 failed marriages. "Get yourself another woman" is not the flip rejoinder of a thoughtless serial husband. It is the remark of a man intent on finding permanent love with a woman, such lasting love being a primary goal in life. In 1999, prior to marrying Melania and after the divorce from his second wife Marla, on Good Morning America, Diane Sawyer asked Donald Trump, "What do you feel guiltiest about?" He replied, "I feel guiltiest about not having had a successful marriage, because coming from parents that were married 63 years and having gone through all that, I think that is the thing I would probably feel most guilty about. My business has been unbelievable, so I can't feel guilty about business. I think I've done well. I've made a lot of people very proud, very rich. But the business thing has been pure. The part of my life I think I'm most disappointed in is that I have not had the great marriage. And I would have thought that would have happened. Some of my friends get divorced, but their parents were divorced 2 or 3 times. I come from a home where marriage was just incredible. My parents truly loved each other." Trump has outlined the mistakes of his first 2 marriages. More on this important topic later. With Melania as his 3rd marriage, Trump feels an equilibrium he could not find with Ivana and Marla. About those two
Sample complete. Ready to continue?